Red Bull's recent dominance has drawn a lot of angry comments from Mercedes, but it seems like they have forgotten what it's like to be on the top of the game for 8 consecutive years. Ferrari, for one, were not shy of reminding the Silver Arrows that periods of dominance can change very quickly, sending a fierce warning to the Brackley-based squad for the upcoming era. Is this rivalry ever going to take place alongside the dominance of Red Bull? And will Ferrari be able to actually back up their talk? Max Verstappen's performance in the Hungarian GP was truly exceptional, reaching a level of dominance we hadn't seen before. Many fans, including myself, were expecting a more competitive race, but Red Bull proved that their superiority is even greater than anticipated. Verstappen's lead was impressive, finishing 33 seconds ahead of the second-place driver, Lando Norris. Even Toto Wolff, the head of Mercedes, expressed his surprise at Red Bull's performance. He compared Verstappen's dominance to a field of Formula 2 cars competing against a Formula 1 car. Toto Wolff's comparison of Max Verstappen's dominance to a field of Formula 2 cars was noted by Fred Vasseur, the Ferrari counterpart. Vasseur responded by saying, "Give him an F2 car and he will see." He also mentioned that the feeling of dominance was probably similar when Mercedes was leading a couple of years ago. Vasseur emphasized the importance of focusing on their own performance, minimizing mistakes, and doing their best without making assumptions about the competition. This is what he said. Red Bull are in front, but I think the feeling was probably the same when Mercedes was in front a couple of years ago. And I won't go into this field. I think honestly that the most important thing is to be focused on yourself, to try to get the best from what we have, to minimize a mistake, to do a better job, and then what will come will come. But I'm not sure that makes sense to try to do this kind of assumption. Verstappen secured victory at the F1 Hungarian Grand Prix, maintaining Red Bull's streak of winning every race this season, and his teammate Perez alongside McLaren's Norris joined him on the podium. Mercedes' Hamilton finished 4th, while Ferrari's Leclerc and Sainz took P7 and P8 respectively. Vasseur also commented on Red Bull's consistent upgrades and improvements, acknowledging that while all teams are making progress, the regulations and cost constraints limit their advancements compared to the past. Vasseur emphasized the difficulty of closing the gap with a dominant team like Red Bull. He pointed out that in the last few weekends, different teams took turns being ahead in qualifying, but Red Bull consistently maintained a significant lead in the races. To catch up, the focus should be on self-improvement rather than solely trying to match Red Bull. For example, Alfa Romeo had a good race and is working hard to develop in various areas like aero and suspension, but it's crucial to understand and implement upgrades effectively. Bringing upgrades doesn't always result in a significant step forward. It's essential to comprehend and optimize the improvements for better performance. Vasseur denied that Leclerc became overly emotional during his mid-race communications. He explained that there was an issue with Leclerc's microphone, making it difficult to understand him. Leclerc was actually expressing concern about the pace, not showing strong emotions like many people thought. Vasseur, with years of experience on the pit wall, acknowledged that mistakes happen in racing, and it's his responsibility as a team principal to identify and address them. He admitted that the team has made too many mistakes and is open about the need to improve. He also believes that other team principals, including Toto Wolff, would share a similar sentiment about facing challenges and working to resolve them. I personally don't really understand Vasseur's comments. Mercedes is progressing and improving with each race, which is positive to say the least. It's frustrating to realize that even when you're making progress, the competition is still moving ahead. On the other hand, Ferrari talked a lot but hasn't made significant progress with their car. They were expected to challenge Red Bull as their main rivals, but it turned out to be a big disappointment. This year, everyone was hopeful that Ferrari would show more competitiveness against Red Bull, but they find themselves trailing behind 3 other teams now. It's quite surprising and not what was anticipated. Frederic Vasseur admits that Ferrari made too many mistakes during the Hungarian Grand Prix, which prevented them from challenging for podium positions for the 2nd race in a row. Charles Leclerc finished 7th, and Carlos Sainz came 8th on Sunday in Budapest, following the British Grand Prix where they secured the final 2 points-paying positions. Leclerc's performance was hindered by a slow first pit stop and a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, costing him a position to George Russell. Vasseur said that they would need time to analyze what went right and wrong during the different format of the race, making it challenging to pinpoint the perfect approach. However, he acknowledged that Ferrari's mistakes were not just in the pit stop or pit entry, but also in qualifying and tyre management. He emphasized that the team needs to address these mistakes and improve their performance. As a team principal, Vasseur takes responsibility for identifying and fixing these issues, and he admitted that Ferrari needs to work on reducing errors. Ferrari currently holds the 4th position in the Constructors' Championship, trailing Aston Martin by 17 points before the Belgian Grand Prix, which will be broadcasted on Sky Sports F1 from July 28th to July 30th. During the race, both Leclerc and Sainz were close competitors for most of the time, but Sainz struggled towards the end and was overtaken easily by Russell. Sainz expressed his disappointment with their current performance, stating that they are not where they want to be in terms of race pace, tyre degradation, and one-lap performance. They need to analyze and understand why they weren't as strong as expected at this track and work on improvements. It's clear that right now we are not where we want to be in terms of race pace, in terms of everything really. Tyre deg, pace, even one lap this weekend hasn't been our strength either, said Sainz. Leclerc also shared his perspective, mentioning that their performance wasn't too bad in the first and third stints, but they faced challenges during the second stint due to a slow pit stop. The radio communication issues also complicated matters for them. Overall, that they are still far from their desired level of competitiveness. This is what Leclerc said. The first and third stint honestly wasn't too bad. I think the second stint I had a very slow stop, unfortunately, so I had to push to overtake Lance. Then Carlos and I were together, and then we struggled a bit more. All in all, still far from where we want to be. Both drivers acknowledged the need to make progress and work on their weaknesses to achieve better results in the second half of the season. After the race, Leclerc was asked about the issues with his car, and he expressed frustration, saying it's difficult to predict as things keep changing from one race weekend to the next. I don't know anymore. It changes too much from one weekend to the next. It's impossible to predict anything else. Leclerc's attitude seemed to imply that the team's mistakes are becoming a normal occurrence. Some believe that this season has been one of Leclerc's worst in terms of personal performance and mistakes. Some observers feel that this has been one of Leclerc's tougher seasons in terms of personal performance and mistakes. They believe he is too soft and emotional compared to drivers like Max, Alonso and Hamilton, which could affect his chances of success. Ralf Schumacher, a Sky Sports pundit, was critical of Leclerc's latest mistake, saying that with his experience, such errors should not occur. In response to the criticism, Leclerc defended himself, suggesting that people only pay attention when things go wrong, overlooking his successes and positive moments. I was a bit upset with Charles because he could have avoided that penalty and finished ahead of George and Carlos. However, let's focus on the positives. He had a tough start to the year with a 10th-place penalty in Bahrain, despite qualifying second. In Australia, he was taken out in the first turn on a track he won at last year. It seems like things just kept going wrong from there. He even got a questionable penalty in Monaco with the incident with Lando. Many of the errors and issues, I feel, were not his fault. Besides Lewis's pole this past Saturday, he's the only other driver to get a pole this season, apart from Max. His teammate Carlos is consistently slower than Charles, and he still has 2 podiums this season. Ferrari needs to give him a good engineer, as Xavier is a disaster. Also, that nearly 10-second pit stop was shameful. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think Ferrari's comments are legitimate, and do you think any of the teams have a legitimate chance to challenge Red Bull sooner rather than later?